Hello, hello, and welcome back to the Going Off Track podcast. I am Catherine, and we are on day 14. We are almost at the halfway mark of our F101 spring break series, where I am breaking down old history and lore from F1 from before I became a fan midway through the 2021 season, helping to educate other Drive to Survive era F1 fans about the sport. Yesterday, I talked about Nigel Mansell and why it took him so long to win his first F1 title and all of the other champions that were in the field with him during those 13 years before he got the crown in 1992. Don't forget to like and subscribe so you don't miss a video all series long and all season long, and so I can continue to inflict my motorsport opinions on the greater population. And if you're listening on your preferred podcast platform, don't forget to leave us a 5-star review. Now, we have all had issues with F1 drivers in the lead in the most competitive car, just scampering off into the sunset at the beginning of races and winning races by 20, 30, 40 seconds. But those were not actually the largest margins of victory in an F1 race. And obviously, we've had a lot of those. Lewis Hamilton would just drive off into the sunset back when Mercedes was really good. Hopefully that doesn't happen with George or Kimi, just because we like a little bit more, of competition. But there are two categories in the F1 Racing Records book for margins of victory. It is by time and by lap. So by time, the longest margin of victory in F1 race between winning and P2 happened at the 1958 Portuguese Grand Prix, way back in the day when it was Sterling Moss versus Mike Hawthorne. We've talked about them before in previous episodes. Those are linked above and down in the show notes. Now, Sterling Moss was driving for Van Wall. He won the race in 2 hours, 11 minutes, and 27.8 seconds. Mike Hawthorne in the Ferrari followed 5 minutes and 12 seconds later and was the only driver who finished the race and was classified to not be lapped by the lead driver. So the other thing about this race is Mike Hawthorne was also technically disqualified for allegedly restarting his car against the direction of the circuit because he spun off, but Sterling Moss, his rival, went to bat for him, and the judges ultimately reversed the decision. Now, Stuart Lewis Evans, he was the one that I talked about in the F1 and Does, talking about the Moroccan Grand Prix where he passed away. He was the other Van Wall driver. So he, Gene Brea, Wolfgang von Trips, and Harry Schell were the 4 drivers that finished 1 lap down. Now, Jack Brabham and Maurice Trétignac were 2 laps down, and Roy Salvadori finished the race 4 laps down. That race finished with 6 retirements and 2 drivers who, it says DNA, and when I looked on the race report, and when I looked at it, I was like, I don't know what that means, and I looked it up, and it just says did not arrive. So it was 2 drivers who just straight up didn't show. I think that's hilarious. That was a large margin between winning driver and P2. Now, when we're going by lapped, which ideally I'm going to assume was a larger margin, this happened twice. The first time at the 1969 Spanish Grand Prix, Jackie Stewart finished 2 laps up on Bruce McLaren. Now, Jackie Stewart was driving for Mantra at the time and would go on to win his first World Drivers' Championship that year by 26 points. He was gifted the lead after Chris Amon's Ferrari engine seized up and forced him to retire, and Amon also inherited a 30-second lead from Jochen Rindt, who crashed on lap 19. Bruce McLaren of Bruce McLaren Racing, which is the McLaren Racing we know today, he finished 2 laps down. The Rindt accident was actually Rindt and Graham Hill. They were both in accidents, fortunately survived, but apparently one of the marshals lost an eye, so awkward. There were only 6 finishers in that race of a 14-car grid, so much smaller grid for that race, and 8 retirements. Moving on to the 1995 edition, this is Damon Hill versus Olivier Panis. This was the 1995 season finale and also the last race held in Adelaide before the Australian Grand Prix moved to Melbourne. This was also a race of attrition, though this was 8 finishers out of 24 qualifiers, including multiple car failures and crashes. Damon Hill finished 2 laps up on the rest of the field and finished P2 in the championship, and then would go on to win the championship the next year in 1996. There were only 2 non-points finishers, and super awkward if you're the 2 guys that finished the race but couldn't finish in the points, and those were Pedro Diniz, who finished 4 laps down, and Bertrand Gachot, who finished 5 laps down. And some notable DNFs from that race include Johnny Herbert, Eddie Irvine, Gerhard Berger, Martin Brundle, Michael Schumacher, Jean Alesi, Rubens Barrichello, and David Coulthard. That's not all of them, but it's a few of them. But Fortunately, we are not in an era of Formula One where drivers are lapping so significantly. But I think I'm a little bit worried in the current regulation of how many cars these lead drivers are lapping. We've seen a lot of that so far. A lot of that so far this season. We've had 3 races, I know, but I think that that's something to keep an eye on. And I've said that in a couple of the race reactions. Like I want to make sure that if yes, we can have lead drivers being dominant. I think we should have more than just 2 of them on the same team. But I do want to make sure that the drivers that are behind them, like we're not getting lapped drivers all the way up to the podium. I don't want that. So we'll see. But fortunately, we're not going to be seeing any 5-minute margins, or at least we better not be seeing any 5-minute margins in the race victories this season. Now, coming up next, let's talk about that diamond theft. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, you will. Don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss a video, and I will see you in the next one.